What a joy it is again to be here. Pastor Feary had invited us to come, and then about a month ago or so, he said, by the way, I can't be there that Sunday. But he said it's in good hands. Pastor Roberts is going to be taking care of service, and everybody else is eager and working hard to make sure that everything works. There used to be a time when you would just walk into a place with the old-fashioned Bible under your arms and get up, open it, and start preaching. But these days, there's lots and lots of technical things to take care of, about an hour even so before service. And then the other thing is, do some of us know how to work it when the time comes? Now, I enjoy the technology. I really love it. But it does take some expertise to do that, and you've got wonderful people here taking care of those things. My concern is that we get the truth of the Word out. That's the biggest, and this hopefully just helps us to visualize. A lot of people do not learn unless it goes through the eye gate. Some people just do not get it, but when they do see it, oftentimes it just makes an imprint, and that's why I love the current day visuals that we can use in ministering the Word of God. I have a lot of things to say, so I'm not going to do a lot of preliminary talk, but Carrie and I have been ministering now for over a year in the prophecy ministry, and it's taken us to various places across our country, and we are just so blessed to be able to do that. We had a full day of prophecy conference at the Beacon Baptist Church yesterday in Cambridge. I think it was the fullest that we've seen the church, at least during my time, or our time there. Really a good, well-attended conference yesterday all day. So the pastor already announced next year's date for the third prophecy conference at Cambridge. It is my burden that churches throughout our country will begin to emphasize the prophetic word. Now, I'm a little bit different than a lot of people you hear on podcasts and videos and things that you see on YouTube. I don't necessarily follow the pattern. My burden from day one in 1970, when I started ministering the Word of God out in Saskatchewan, was to get the word about the final days clarified. In my mind, there was so much to learn. I've come down the road a fair ways. There's still lots to learn, but I'm glad for those few tidbits I've been able to pick up along the way. And now that I'm not pastoring, and haven't been since 2020, but I've been preaching, and it is my privilege to be able to preach in various churches. And I really enjoy when people say, I love to hear the prophetic word, because about a third of the Bible is prophecy. And so therefore we cannot overlook it. It is an important part of Scripture. Well, enough said of that. For our morning lesson in Sunday school, I understand that we need to be finished at about 9:15 or so we're going to target that. Try to be done by then, and if you have any questions, I would be happy to try to have you come to the front, and between Sunday school and morning's worship, try to answer some of those. And again, as somebody asked me a question this morning, I would say that on a lot of things there are opinions, and when it comes to opinions, I don't hold to any very strong position. When it comes to what does the Word say, then that's non-negotiable. What the Word says, the Word says. What could be is an opinion, therefore anybody's guess could be right. But in any case, for our morning time in Sunday school, I want us to talk about something that not a lot of people think about on any regular basis. We see it in Zechariah chapter number 6 and verse number 12 and 13. If you'd like to follow along in your Bible, and some people do, some people say the screen is not the Bible, this is the Bible, and if that's how you feel, please open it up and follow along. We try to be as accurate as we can in copying what's in the Bible onto the screen, so feel comfortable that we don't use anything else but the old traditional Bible, the King James. That's what we go by. We like to proclaim it. We like to be as true to it as we know how. And I want us to just follow through on these two verses to begin with. First of all, we read, and I will, in fact, maybe just open up my Bible to do that so that I can read it right from our black and white text. Zechariah chapter 6, verse 12, and speak unto them, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, Behold the man whose name is the branch. And he shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. Even he shall build the temple of the Lord, and he shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule upon his throne. And he shall be a priest upon his throne, and the counsel of peace shall be between them both. What I do want you to notice is that the Word of God tells us that it was God who was going to be building the temple. I believe he is referring to a temple that we do not yet have, but he will be building it. That doesn't mean that there weren't legitimate temples, because there were. And so my Sunday school lesson today is the temple in Israel. We're going to be focusing for a few moments on the temple in the past. And I want to talk to you a little bit about where we are with the temple today, and then project a little bit about the temple that he will be building. Now, it all began way back with the days of Moses, when in the book of Exodus, Moses was instructed to have a tabernacle put together. It was mobile, and some of you have studied the tabernacle, especially if you're older and you've been in church all the time since you were youth. There were times when the tabernacle was a big feature in Sunday school or in Sunday night services. Not so much Sunday morning, but people would focus on that. People would build structures somewhat similar to the tabernacle, and people would be able to go and have a look to see what took place in this. It was intricately built. It was built with the intent of God having a place where people could come to do their sacrifice and worship, and above everything, to have their sins atoned by their sacrificial lamb that they would offer up during the Day of Atonement. And they would carry this tabernacle. It was mobile. They could fold it up. And the Levites were responsible to pick it up. The book of Numbers details it for you as to how they were set up in different camps, and everything was done decently and in order. If you think there's a lot of work to set up for a Sunday morning service here, for those who do that, it's nothing like the Levites had to do, and they had to do everything exactly. It had to be precision. It had to be done the way that God would be honored and the way that God would be glorified. And so this mobile tabernacle was something that they needed as they walked through the wilderness for 40 years. It was something that they had when they first entered into the land of Israel and started conquering and to take the various territories that God had given to them. Now, I want you to know something, and most of you will probably agree with this, and that was that the land of Israel was not originally occupied by the people known as Israel. It was a place that God gave to Abraham and said, you're going to inherit this land. And so it was a God idea that the land of Israel would be occupied and taken control of by his special chosen people. It is the work of God. It is the plan of God. You have in that land of Israel, you've got promises. You've got all kinds of wars and battles that take place. You've got brilliant things that take place in the land of Israel over the years. But we need to realize that God not only chose a man to be the first one who would inherit the land, but he also gave him the promise of the land. And that land would go more extensively than what they have there today. And in the days of Solomon, that land was occupied from the Wadi down close to Egypt, not the Nile, but the river right close to Egypt. And then it expanded over to the Euphrates River and traveled up some, then came up north of Lebanon, and then came down. If you could imagine Israel tried to occupy that land today, they would have a lot of work to do yet. They will never inherit the land by war. They'll never inherit it by occupation or by winning it. They will inherit it by the promise of God. But anyway, they needed to have the tabernacle so that they would have a specific place where God could reveal his glory, where the people could come, sacrifice, and worship. After the tabernacle days, and Israel had been settled in the land of Israel following the days of Joshua's occupation and battles to get the land for the people, God instructed King Solomon the exact details of a temple that would be built in the place where Abraham had offered his son Isaac up on Mount Moriah. The Jews have a very interesting statement, and it might vary some, I'm not sure, but the statement that I've read over some time is that you have a big universe, and the center of the universe is planet Earth. Then they say in the center of planet Earth is the land of Israel. And the epicenter of Israel is Jerusalem. And the epicenter of Jerusalem is the temple. And the epicenter of the temple is Moriah, where the son Isaac was sacrificed, or was to be sacrificed. That's where the Holy of Holies would be. And so they have a very interesting take on that. And the fact is that God calls Israel not only the apple of his eye, but he calls Israel the center. Countries built around it. It is the center of God's economy. So you have the Temple of Solomon that was built. It was majestic. Then you had the problem with backsliding Israel and apostate Israel, and then you had Judah that followed. So in 722 BC, the Assyrians came into North Israel and essentially took them captive and took them away. Over the years, you hear such things as the 10 lost tribes. And when the north was taken captive by the Assyrians, they did in fact take the north of Israel and basically render it neutral. So they could not have any action or function or political activity up in North Israel. And they were taken captive, so that from there on, you had a dispersion into Syria, Assyria, and then dispersion into other parts of the world. And so today, if you were to find a Jew somewheres in South Africa, or you'd find a Jew somewheres in Russia, or you find him somewheres in the north part of Canada, you should not be too surprised, because they have been scattered all over the world. Now, you have concentration of them, Montreal, Toronto. You got concentration of them in New York. You've got large populations in New York. So they have been dispersed. They are not lost. We just don't know who they are or where they are. I don't believe that I am a Jew. I don't know if you are a Jew or not. You might not even know whether you are one or not. Some of you, I think, believe you know that. And so the fact is that God knows every one of them, and he knows exactly where they are. And one day he will pick out the Jews from all over the world and bring them back together. But what happened was, Judah, though they saw what happened to North Israel and saw the punishment of God upon them by the captivity of the Assyrians, rebelled against God, backslid, and were secular in their industry, and just became careless about their worship. And so Nebuchadnezzar ultimately was used as God's vessel to come and to take over Jerusalem, destroy Jerusalem, destroy the temple, and take the people of Judah into the land of Babylon, where they stayed for 70 years. There's so much in the Old Testament about that 70-year period where they were taken into a foreign land. They hung up their harps. They could not sing the song of Zion in the foreign land, and so they were in a state of captivity. It wasn't until Daniel saw that the 70 years prophesied by Jeremiah were fulfilled, and then Daniel prayed, and he prayed earnestly, and God moved upon the heart of the king of Persia to give the announcement that they should go back and to rebuild Jerusalem. Nehemiah was one of the ones that was used, and then Haggai and Zechariah, Joshua, some of these come into the scene, and they then come in and they rebuild a temple in Jerusalem. We don't really know what that temple looked like. There are so many guesses, and again, this is opinion. This is not anything that I would say that this is what it looked like. But I am assuming that because of the value that they put on the temple, that they would have taken great care to make it as nice as they could. When they did rebuild it, however, the Jews cried and lamented and said, "It's not like it used to be." Well, you know, there are a lot of people in churches today that keep saying it's just not like it used to be. And that some of that is good, some of it is bad. In any case, when this temple was being rebuilt, some of them wept because they said, this doesn't hold a candle to how Solomon built it. Well, this was the best they could do, and God led them into rebuilding. So this was the second temple. This second temple was there when Herod took over, and the Romans had finally become the fourth empire to take over to rule the world. And during the days of Herod in Israel, he went ahead and he rebuilt the temple. It was under construction during the days of Jesus' ministry on earth. Now, he went there, so it was obviously open for service, but it was not finished. By the way, this temple was not finished until 64 AD. It was destroyed in 70 AD, so the Jews had only 6 years where they could actually come to this temple to do their sacrifice and to do whatever they do in the temple of God, only for 6 years that they can enjoy the completed masterpiece. Someone said that the temple in Israel should have been classified as the 8th wonder of the world. They said it was so majestic, it was so beautiful, so ornate, and yet it never made it. Why didn't it make it? Well, because it's in Israel, because it's Jewish, therefore it didn't make it. They're not the most popular people in the world. They're not most loved people in the world. But I do want to say this, that they are very much loved by God. And if the world hates them, God still will love his people that he chose. This temple was in place when Jesus spoke to his disciples in Matthew chapter 24. Now, I want you to understand that Matthew chapter 24 and chapter 25 are two chapters that describe end-time situations in the world. I call it that interval between the rapture and the parousia. The rapture comes, you have Matthew 24 and 25 describing the period to some degree, not like the book of Revelation does, but Matthew 24 and 25 are tribulation passages. You have such statements as, "Then shall the gospel of the kingdom be preached to all the world." That is in fact true. That is not necessarily a church message. That is an Israel message, when Israel will be responsible for taking the gospel of the kingdom to the uttermost regions of the world. And they will. They will have 144,000 Jewish evangelists, sealed especially by God, who will then take the gospel of the kingdom. The gospel of the kingdom is the same gospel that we preach. Only the time factor is different. We're preaching the gospel in hope of the blessed hope, and that is that the rapture will come and take the church out of this world. The 144,000 born-again, converted Jewish evangelists will proclaim the gospel of Christ, which will be called the gospel of the kingdom, preparing the people in the tribulation time to know how to worship and honor God, how to have their sins taken care of, and how they will ultimately be able to enter into the kingdom. Remember that the Bible says that if you are not born again, you will not see the kingdom. If you're not born again, you will not enter into the kingdom. And so they will be proclaiming that, and when all the gospel will be preached throughout all of the world, they will be more successful than we. They'll be more powerful than we. They will be protected in a way that the church has not experienced protection, because they are unharmed by anything that the opposition to the gospel will try to put upon them. In Matthew chapter 24, there in verse number 2, Jesus said this, "There shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down." What was he talking about? The disciples were looking at the architecture. They were looking at the structure, and they said, "Jesus, do you see this? This is amazing." How many of you were here when Bethel Baptist first opened up this building? Can I see a show of hands if you were here when Bethel Baptist first opened this building? There's 2 hands. Is that it? Oh, there's a number of hands here. Okay, anybody here? All right. Did you say anything about amazing, how beautiful, how nice? And how many of you said something like that? Some of you did. Yeah. Well, it was. I was around the time when this building opened up. I wasn't here when you opened it up because I was pastoring at Elmer, but yes, I think maybe I was in St. John's by that time. But anyway, this building is still beautiful. But some of you got used to it. You go to Bethel, this is how it looks, this is how it is. But it was phenomenal. Well, the disciples were just overwhelmed by it because they had now seen the temple almost finished. It was a few things yet for 30 years that had to be done to it, but it would be done. How amazing a building we have over here. Just look at the temple, Jesus. Do you see that? And Jesus said, there's not even one stone going to be left of that place. He said, it will be totally destroyed. We read in the next verse, Matthew 24, verse number 3, and the disciples said, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Interesting that surrounding this temple and the admiration of it, Jesus would explain to the disciples what was going to take place. And I want to say to you that in 70 AD, something phenomenal took place. Titus, who was the warrior for the Roman Caesars, came into Jerusalem and virtually destroyed the city. But wait a minute, it's the city of our great God. How can he allow that? God has his program. We'll not necessarily figure it all out. We don't have the answers as to why. And this is, if there's anything that I get in questions during our prophecy meetings, is why. And I tell them, just like when my 3-year-old children, when my children were 3 years old, they would say, why, Daddy? And I would say, I don't know why, but this is how it is. When it comes to what God allows to Jerusalem to it to happen, we can't say why. We could say, well, it could be for this sin, could be for this, could be for that, it could be something else. But we know Jerusalem was destroyed. We also know that the temple was destroyed. Not one stone was left upon another. Guess what's that at the temple now? You have a temple wall. It's called the Wailing Wall. It's international. Not only do the Jews go to the Wailing Wall, but you have people from all over the world that like to go over to that wall and put their little prayer slips into the wall. A lot of that is just a novel thing to do. Many of them take it seriously. They pray that God will someday restore Israel. They're hoping that it will be restored. The temple was destroyed. This was not the second coming of Christ. This was the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, and then there would be a gap, a time factor that would be unknown. It was not revealed in the Old Testament. The prophets did not see it. The apostles made it clear that God has a program, and the program would be that he would build his church. And so the temple was destroyed. Preterists, and this is one of the opposing doctrines that like to just argue about things. They say everything was fulfilled, the second coming has happened, and we're just waiting for the end of the world. That's simplified, very simplified, in fact. But coming out of preterism is replacement theology. Coming out of preterism is a lot of things that just do not fit the picture of the prophetic word. So we look at 70 AD as a crisis. We look at it as a catastrophe. Look at it as something really big. That centerpiece was destroyed. For almost 2,000 years now, Israel has been waiting for their temple to be rebuilt. Well, there is, in fact, a temple that is already designed. I have a video, but we don't have time to show it. But they do have it designed. It's very intricate in detail. And they're hoping that one time soon they'll be able to rebuild the temple. I have a message for you tonight, and I call it the key players in the end time world conflicts. And I want to answer for you there, at least if I have the time to do it. I want to answer for you how and why and in which way the Jews will be able to rebuild their temple. If you've heard, and I know there are so many different opinions, if you have heard that they could build the temple beside the mosque that is over in Jerusalem, you've heard wrong. It will be built right exactly in the same location it was, and that's where the mosque is sitting. And I know there may be various opinions, and I wouldn't fight with you over that. I would just say that I believe that what God instructed where it was, that's how it's going to continue. He's not going to settle for anything contrary to what is planned. Mount Moriah will need to be there in the center. The Holy of Holies will need to be there. And so it has to be built exactly where the Mosque of Omar is today. And I'm going to try to answer that for you later on this evening, hoping that you'll be back to hear some of that. It's a long message, so I'm trying to make it as short as I can. But it is, I think, one of the greatest eye-openers to the end times that I've ever been able to figure out in the Scriptures. I've not copied that message I don't copy my messages, I develop my messages. But I use a lot of other teachers and preachers and books. I do that, no doubt about that. But I don't copy messages. These are messages that I dig out of the Word of God. That's what I love doing. I love to bring it to you, and the result of that is that I usually get about a quarter of my message done, and then I have to close, which we're going to do right now. So we're going to pray, and then we're going to take our break before the 10:30 service begins. But I do want to say to you, if any of you have questions and you want to come up, I'll be here till the 10:30 hour and try to talk with you, listen to you, and learn from you if that's even something that needs to be done. So let's pray. Father, you have shown us much in the Scripture, but we know so little. And I just pray, Lord, that our eyes will be open more and more, that we might see the beauty of your truth. And Lord, may this day be very important here at Bethel Baptist as we talk about things that are so very relevant, and they are relevant because of what the Scriptures tell us. We commit this, what we have said, to you. We commit the next hour to you. Pray that you'll bless the singers, the musicians, those who orchestrate things, those who take care of the sound and the video and all that takes place. And Lord, above all, may your message be clear. May it be something that just touches our hearts and brings us closer to the Lord. We commit to you in Jesus' name, amen.